So I just finished watching Linkara's latest Top the Fourth Wall episode, his 13th anniversary. Congratulations to him for 13 years of doing the show and having the channel. But he was talking about, as he yearly does during the anniversary, about the Spider-Man clone saga, or at least stories that connect to it in various ways. Last year he did Web of Life, and now he did Web of Death. Web of Life he focused on Ben Reilly, where Web of Death focused on Peter Parker. And one thing that I notice a lot about with Linkara's reviews of the Spider-Man stories sometimes is he likes to reference certain things. Like when he notices something that, he's, positive about, that he backs up, that he basically lets out a little bit of frustration, a little bit of a mini rant, if you will, because of the fact of, what he and all of us know what occurs later on. For example, when he talked about Peter and Mary Jane, narrating to themselves in their apartments before making out, this is a little before Mary Jane reveals Peter's going to be a father. Basically, he just he just goes on this little mini tangent, if you will, of one more day and how plans were for it to be rectified, and it wasn't. Instead, sins past was rectified in its place and stuff like that, and how everything's getting convoluted. And then he just jokingly said, "What, me bitter? What gives you that idea?" But one can understand where Linkara Lewis is coming from when he feels like that. Because I think with anybody that reviews comic books, as part of their channel, whether it's an all comic book review channel, it's a multimedia review channel, or just a channel that has, all kinds of things to talk about, like mine does, since it started back in 2008. If there's one thing about people that do this, is even if it's in character, or even if like I said, even if it's in character as well, is they like to inject a little bit of realism, like how they truly feel about a certain scenario, into their reviews, into their discussions about this or that, because they want it to be known, or at least they want to remind people out there, and hopefully those that are in charge of these things that they're reviewing, the reason they basically put a little bit of themselves into it is to hopefully get the attention and say, hey, look, I'm I know it's been years and everything, but I still think this is a stupid idea, and I would like you to try to change it, or like you to try to rectify it, and things like that. And with Lewis, Linkara, if you will, it's the same thing. When it comes to One More Day, he wants them, like a lot of us, to rectify the entire situation. It's like it just doesn't make any sense that you would go this route just because this person didn't like the marriage, or this group of people didn't like the marriage, and we're going to rectify it to now they're back to singles, and but now we're on the verge of getting them married again. It's like it's just something that, obviously, as Linkara said in this little mini tangent he did during the review, it's a lot more convoluted than needed. And that's a fact. That is indeed a fact. Now, when you compare it to other comics out there, I mean, some comics are pretty much the same. They do the same things at times. They basically, what's the word? What am I trying to say here? And this is one of the things, as I've always said about doing these kind of videos, is when you do things unscripted, you kind of think about what you're going to say right then and there, off the top of your head. And what I'm trying to say is, when you have all these comic book companies basically doing similar situations with their comic book IPs, it doesn't really go over popular with a lot of folks, because it's like, why would you need to do this when possibly you're going to rectify it later on? A good example is the New 52. Nobody was a fan of it. Nobody was a fan of the New 52. Nobody was a fan of the Countdown to 52. Nobody wanted it, because they felt that what they got was not a good look for DC or the characters involved. I mean, yeah, some good things came out of it, there's no doubt. But a lot of fans didn't appreciate, this change in the status quo, and they wanted things back. And what did DC do? DC, to their credit, did rectify it, but they rectified it in a way that I think is a prime example of what Marvel should do with things like the One More Day situation when it comes to Spider-Man, and that's just place it in an alternate universe. And that's what they did. They basically set it up to where, yeah, the New 52 still exists somewhat, but it exists in a different universe. Basically its own thing. And now everything is once again kind of identical or a bit of a hybrid of what 52 was, but also what made the original status quo popular, to the fans as it was previously before they went that route. And again, it's the same kind of method that Marvel could pull, with the Spider-Man comics. Just say One More Day takes place in an alternate universe, while the true marriage of Spider-Man and Mary Jane is still intact in the Prime universe. Easy peasy right there. No confusion whatsoever. And even if you want to dedicate, a comic book or an arc or whatever to that One More Day scenario and maybe rectify it down the line, all you have to do is say this takes place in another time, another place. Or this takes place in Earth ... alternate universe. And that's it. And if you do that, problem solved in my opinion. I mean, with this one thing that's always made me and a lot of other people, fans of the Sonic comic books, is when they would do these little side stories or these main stories during the Archie run, and obviously they were more tie-ins to, let's say, games that were coming out or whatever, they would basically put in the little yellow box, or even a page before, they would say that it takes place in another time, another place. So that way there would be no confusion. And to me, if Marvel was to do that with Spider-Man's One More Day situation, and primarily say that Mary Jane and Peter are married in the Prime universe, then again, like I said, problem solved. I mean, it's the same kind of scenario with... It's the same kind of scenario when it comes to, Sonic Mobius years later. At first, Ken Penders, despite what he may say now, and others may justify, justify him in, saying themselves, Ken originally, and he's gone on record in saying this in the past, he originally intended for Mobius years later to be the true continuity, the true future of the Prime universe. That was the original intention. Until later on, Ian Flynn came on board, and those in charge at the Archie Sonic book, along with Ian and some of the Sega representatives, said basically, nope, that's not going to happen. That it's cool, you want to have a future storyline, that's fine, but we're going to rectify it, to where it's an alternate universe. It's a possible future that takes place in another dimension, another, multiverse, if you will. And that's what they did. That's inevitably, what they did with the Mobius years later storyline, I should say, later on. That's what they did. And again, problem solved with the Spider-Man One More Day deal. All they have to do is just say it takes place in Earth ... alternate universe, part of the multiverse, and then basically use a comic or whatever and say this is the Prime verse, this is where all the main stuff happens, and oh, this is where Mary Jane and Peter are married. Problem solved. Problem solved. End of discussion. I mean, another good example, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How many different interpretations of the TMNT have we gotten throughout the years where they're different in every aspect, and the way they explain it almost in every incarnation is that the different aspects of the turtles that we're getting, along with the friends and enemies and all that, are because they take place in alternate universes. How many times have we seen that? A lot. A primary good example of them explaining this was the finale to the 2K3 series, Turtles Forever, where they basically crossed over with the 87 to 96 turtles, primarily the 87 to early 90s turtles, and the original Prime Mirage turtles, the black and white ones that were first created. That's how they explained it. That's how they also explained why April in the cartoon, in the 87 to early 90s world of turtles, as a reporter, and why in the 2K3 she's more of a science person, and in the Mirage we don't really see her, but I think she's alluded to as existing. But then on top of that, let's take a look at TMNT, the CGI series by Nickelodeon. They did a couple of crossovers there between the 80s turtles, 80s early 90s turtles, and the current Nickelodeon TMNT turtles. And what was the reaction? One of the clips that's shown on YouTube and various other places, when the 80s to early 90s turtles see the Nickelodeon version of April and Casey, they're shocked. The reaction is they're shocked, because they're like, April? Casey? They're kids. Because here's the thing. The April and the Casey they're used to are adults. And I think at the end of one of those crossovers, we see exactly what, why they were shocked and why they're used to seeing certain people, friends or allies or whatever, a certain way. And you can't tell me that, when they were doing Rise, they weren't thinking the same thing, because they probably were. But they didn't do it, as far as I know. But here's the thing. The April there was not just a younger April, just like the April in the Nickelodeon series prior, but she was a different race. She was a different ethnicity, if you will, ethic. She was a different ethical, she was, what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to say this carefully, she was different from a racial ethic standpoint, and at times that is a good thing. But also the fact that the reason she was different in that standpoint is it was paying homage to what one of the original designs of her was when it all started. The point is, when you look at something like Spider-Man One More Day, and how this, again, all connects to this, is all Marvel has to do is look at that and say, this takes place in the alternate universe of Earth 686 or 696 or whatever, right? Or 716 or whatever, right? That's all they have to do. All they have to do is say, this takes place in alternate universe Earth 17, or Earth 716, or Earth 720, or Earth 740, whatever. And basically explain that it's identical to the Prime verse, but there are differences, and that one of the primary differences is Peter and Mary Jane are no longer married, because this universe of Earth 716, 720, 740, whatever you want to call it, was rebooted due to a deal Peter Parker and Mary Jane made with Mephisto. So you can make that as an explanation, make that its own universe, and then, like I said, allow the Prime universe to have the established marriage between Peter Parker and Mary Jane, and there you go. No confusion whatsoever. No confusion whatsoever. And to me, a good way to really, do something like that in the future, like I was saying, sorry about that, but anyway, problem solved. Problem solved. All you have to do, basically, is just acknowledge that it takes place in a different universe, give the Earth a number, or whatever you want to call it, and then set the marriage of Peter Parker and Mary Jane in the Prime universe, and, easy peasy. Easy peasy, if you will. You make everybody happy. And as I was trying to say before the interruption there, you have the multi-universe situation coming up real soon with, No Way Home and, Multiverse of Madness. Why not promote, something like this to tie into it? Why not do it? Why not say, for once and for all, One More Day, the events that took place there that have yet to be rectified, are a different alternate universe, and the marriage of Peter Parker and MJ is in the Prime universe, and it's still going on. Because honestly, if you do that, people will be happy. And I know there's multiple different interpretations of Spider-Man from different universes that we see in the comics. Don't get me wrong. There's one of the fact that Spider-Man, Mary Jane, and their daughter are a Spider-Man family. They're basically all dressed in web-slinger outfits. Don't get me wrong. And they're all doing superhero stuff. Don't get me wrong. I see that. But that again, that's an alternate universe. If you want to focus on the Primeverse basically is where that marriage needs to be at. And then you could take, like I say, what happened in One More Day that is yet to be rectified and say it's an alternate universe. And you know what? Here's the thing. Here's the thing. There are stories out there with Spider-Man in a marriage life with the kids and all that that people look at as the Primeverse. Like, this is their Spider-Man, not the One More Day stuff. And to me, if you want people to focus on the Primeverse, then to me, you got to rectify it somehow by saying One More Day's events is an alternate universe. Like I said, Earth 716 or 720 or 740, whatever. Do that, and I think a lot of people will be happy because they could say at least that the One More Day stuff, it did happen, but not in true continuity as the Prime universe events take place in. That it took place in an alternate universe, so it doesn't really have much effect on what happens here. That's just how I look at it. That's how I feel about it. Because honestly, it, like I say, it creates less confusion. Everybody, is pretty much satisfied with what you are giving them. And, you could still keep the One More Day thing going, but it's non-consequential, it's non-canonical, if you will, compared to what you focus on in the Primeverse, if you know what I mean. But what do you guys think? Do you think this is a direction that Marvel or any comic book publisher should go when they try to, change something up that shouldn't be changed? What are your thoughts? Comment down below, live chat during the premiere, which hopefully you have. Like the video. Also, check me out at patreon.com/bwrosas. Also, check me out at VENMO at bwrosas. Also, check me out at bwrosas discussions on all your favorite audio podcast locations, except for Pandora. Also, check out my Venmo as well if you want to help donate there, as well as the Teespring store for some more merchandise if you are interested in that, especially with the holiday season fast approaching. So until next time, guys, let me know what your thoughts are, and I am out.